Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book loving, notebook hoarding literacy teacher educator on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. On this podcast, we explore the power of leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing. We lean into our curiosity and creativity and embrace a spirit of lifelong learning to cultivate a life we love. Now, grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate.
Happy Thursday, everyone. I'm here with a quick introduction to today's episode. As you know, we are pretty bookish on this podcast. We love books, we love notebooks and all the things that we can do with them. We also love book and notebook adjacent things like book candles or baskets of pens and markers too, right? One thing that our bookish obsessions have in common, though, is paper. We might read the stories that are printed on it. We might write our own in our notebook, or maybe we're even getting creative with paper crafting or calligraphy. Paper is central to getting literate. That's why I'm so excited to introduce today's guest to you. Today, I am talking with Debra Glanz of the Paper Assembly. She is this amazing paper artist making some pretty incredible creations that recently caught my eye and my literate heart. Today, she's talking all about her work, the pieces that she made that I made my own, and how you can get inspired too. And listen up. If you're like me, someone who is obsessed with notebooks, but can be hesitant to write into some of them because they are just so pretty and I don't want to ruin them, then this episode is for you. There is a mic drop moment that you won't want to miss. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. I am excited today because I am here with Debra. We've got a special guest as our featured guest on the episode today. So Debra, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Hello, and thank you. I'm happy to be here.
One of the best things I've learned about having a podcast in the 30 or so episodes that I've been able to do is that the podcast gives you an excuse, a really great excuse, to reach out to people that you would be fascinated to connect with. And this is a book about, or a podcast about books and reading and writing and notebooks and learning and being creative. And so I've used the podcast to be able to reach out to you and talk about the really great things that you're making that I stumbled upon so happily, and just chat with you today about what you do and, of course, what you've been reading and a couple of ways that our community can get in touch with you as well. So to give listeners a bit of background, I was doing some holiday shopping online, as I'm sure many of us are doing lately, and I went to one of my go-to shops. I love uncommon goods online because, well, there are uncommon things. There are things that are unique. They're different. I know if I get something there, it's not going to be a duplicate of something that someone has already received. And so I was scrolling and thinking that maybe I had seen most of what was on the site because I had been there so often. And lo and behold, I stumbled upon this beautiful book tree. And this repurposed book tree, it was this beautiful holiday shaped tree made out of one of my favorite things, books and paper. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And of course, I instantly started Googling who made this book tree. Where is this person? What else did they make? How did they get the idea for this? And I found you, and you so graciously agreed to come onto the podcast and say hello to everyone. So for that, I am grateful.
Well, hello to everyone.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. I gave them a little bit of backstory. You make these beautiful book trees, but just give listeners the backstory. What do you do? How did you come up with this tree idea? And how do you get your inspiration for this great stuff?
Well, it's a bit of a circuitous route to the trees. My degree is in art with a concentration in textiles, but when my kids were small, I trained in bookbinding, and I was a bookbinder for years, and loved it, but got tired of people picking it up and going, "Oh, this is too nice to write in." So,
I'm totally done.
yay.
I'm sorry.
How do you make a living that way? But I designed a line of paper, and I was taking books and scrapbooks and picture frames to a wholesale market, and ended up sort of missing the studio. So I got back into the studio, but switched to making boxes. I'm getting there, trust me.
No, I love it. I love it all. I love the long way.
Yeah. And so I do these sort of sculptural box forms. They're not, I mean, you say box and everybody thinks, what your Amazon packages come in, but they're not like that at all. They're decorative pieces. And one type of box that I make is made from a book cover, an actual book cover. And I sort of deconstruct the book and reinforce the spine and build a box within it. Well, then I had all these book blocks of just the pages after you cut them out of the cover, carefully cut them out of the cover. And I mean, I recycled them, and it just didn't feel right. So I was getting ready for a holiday show, and I thought, let me see what I can figure out here. And just started, there were many iterations. First they had straight edges, then I deckled the edges. They had different bases and everything, and finally landed on sort of a formula that I liked, with the deckled edges in a tapered form in a cork base on a wooden platform. And that's mainly to give it weight so it doesn't topple over. But they've sort of taken on a life of their own. And there are really no two the same. Some of them have a more rounded shape. Some of them have a traditional TP shape. Some of them have a much more of a curve up from the base to the top. So there's still room for individualization, even though there is a formula to them, sort of. So anyway, that's how I got to the trees, and I did not expect them to do that much. I thought, because really it's a fairly simple idea, but it is well executed. And I should have known that, because quite often those are the best things, is keep it simple.
Yes.
So
yes, but
anyway.
I love though how it wasn't, sometimes the things that take off, or the things that everybody loves or just make us happy, are those little accidents. And it sounds like the book tree wasn't planned to be a book tree, which I love.
It wasn't. It wasn't. And I've made them from other papers other than books, and they just don't have the same, I don't know, they're just not as approachable, I guess.
Yeah. They don't have the same effect.
Yeah.
There's just something about seeing them and seeing the pages. And if you are a reader and a book lover, you just connect so instantly to that. You've got holiday reading, and you can see the pages, and on some of them you've got those little twinkle lights around them.
I know.
That one's my favorite, because I love by the Christmas lights, and that one just stuck right out. I loved it.
I did have a woman in Hawaii last year who bought 15 of them with lights for every member of her book club. And I thought, perfect.
Wow.
And very generous.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was sweet.
Now all my Get Literate book club members are perking
Oh, no. Oops.
Oh, no. Beyond the trees, because the trees are what initially caught my attention. But, once I went online, and for those that are listening, it's the paper assembly, which is
Yes.
where you're found online, and you can go down the rabbit hole of your Etsy store, like I did. But trees certainly aren't the only things that are there. And you mentioned those beautiful boxes. You're right. Box just doesn't conjure the image that they're going to see when they get on the Etsy page. But you also had those beautiful little libraries, those tiny books, and I loved the letterpress.
Oh yeah.
Oh, those just had my attention. As a book lover and a notebook lover, it's just kind of swoon over those kinds of things. So what else is in your creative wheelhouse beyond these trees?
Well, there are things in the Etsy shop. I used to have two Etsy shops, but I combined them. One was for supplies and one was for finished work. But there is a lot of letterpress type and a lot more that's waiting to be listed because I was buying large batches of type just to get a few pieces that I use on in my own work. So I end up with this, I've got so much type. So I started selling it in maybe unusual configurations because there are people who just love the type. They love the history of it. They love the feel of it. They love the look of it. So I'll put together like a mixed font box with every letter of the alphabet, but all in different fonts. Yeah. And that's probably the best type selling. And also little boxes of dingbats, which are the little ornament, not letters or numbers. They're like little books or little people or.
Anyway, a dingbat. There is a new word for us today.
Yes. I have lots of dingbats, little fleur-de-lis, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, those are very popular. You mentioned the little books, and they haven't made it to the shop yet, but this year I've started putting a very thin ribbon in to make them into ornaments.
Oh boy. Okay,
I know.
Game on there. Okay.
Well, they've been selling too well in the local places. I need to get on top of that. And like I said, trees are kind of taking over at the moment. Right. So next year I'll have them in the shop. But and each one of the little books has a letterpress image on it that I stamp with a hot stamping machine and gold or silver foil. So that's kind of the history of the letterpress stuff that's in my shop. There's a few other things, just things I've used that I'm getting rid of. Like for a long time, I collected vintage pocket watch faces to use on and I still use them on my boxes, but I had way too many, so I put some in there. That kind of stuff. But mostly the shop is there for my boxes. And sadly, right now it's looking pretty thin because it's been a pretty good sales up till now. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But I do need to get some more stuff in there.
So where do you get your inspiration to jump into these ideas? Because as someone here who would love to be more creative, to listen to you talk about these, the mini books, the libraries, the letterpress, the trees, the boxes, it's also inspiring. And it's just making me wonder, how do you get those ideas? Where do they come from?
Well, a lot of times for me, it's the paper. I have cases and cases of paper, and there'll be a single paper that sort of sets off the idea. Other times it might be the end use. I'll do jewelry boxes, or I'll do something that to me has an end use in it. Sometimes lately I found these wonderful metal claw feet to put on boxes, and the seller's in Ukraine, and for a while I couldn't get them. I was panicking. So he told me as soon as he was back up, and I put in a big order. And they've sort of spurred this whole run of Gothic kind of boxes. I mean, they're great. They're fabulous.
I love that.
and sometimes people, if you're wanting to be creative, I strongly recommend you just sort of maybe do a little project or a paper project. I did, for example, Helen Hebert contacted me a couple years ago after she'd seen some little house boxes that I made, and her new book was about projects you could do with one sheet of paper. And so she said, can you design a house box on one sheet of paper? And I laughed and laughed and laughed. And then I couldn't sleep all night thinking about it. And within about a week, I had figured it out, a lot of stops and starts. And she put it in the book. And then she does these online tutorials. She did a final project and did a whole video of what people ended up with from this. It's a very simple little house project, and it blew me away that people would take my very simple little design, and they were cutting windows and lighting it from within and making books come out of it. And yeah. So, I mean, really start with something simple and just kind of let your brain go.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Yeah. That does seem to be the magic. Everyone I ask that question to of, what advice do you have for someone who wants to be more creative? It's play. Just do something. Just start small, figure out what that might be. And that leads me actually to another little place on your website that I found, which is your tutorials. You have printouts. The one that, I'm going to go on record saying that my one little project that I do want to try after seeing it there was those pocket folders. I'm probably not using the right name. But they open up. I would love to do that.
And they're great for writers. You can do like little poetry in each page or illustrated that's a great start off project. This time of year also, the origami boxes kind of are a lot of people will try that. And that's also another good place to start making boxes. You know, that's what you want
to try. Yeah, I appreciated how step-by-step your directions were too. I printed them out and it is ready to go when I get that 20 seconds of courage to just start playing and not worry what the first one might come out like.
Oh, and don't worry about it. I mean, that's why paper is such a great medium. When I would teach, people would go, oh, I don't want to cut into this sheet. It's too beautiful. And I go, it's just paper. There's always a more beautiful sheet in the next place you go. I travel with tubes, cardboard tubes, because I know I'm going to find paper. So, and paper isn't awesome. I mean, it's not like you're doing stained glass where if you break it, it's like, oh my God. Or jewelry where you can, melt everything with a torch. It's just paper.
Yeah. I love how you just said that because, I am the person, I raised my hand, not that anybody could see it, but when you said, I'm afraid to write in that notebook because it's so pretty, my hand was sneaking up there of, yes, I've definitely done that. But to hear you say, there's going to be one better soon. Like you can't get to that next better one unless you actually use this one first. There's nowhere to go. I love that. Especially,
and I wish I followed my own advice because I don't always use it up before I buy the next one. So, but no.
I love that. And you've also got, and I love the motto of your store, and I think you just captured it, but paper is impermanent, and in that lies beauty. You're right. You can't get it wrong. You just have to jump in and make something.
Well, and I probably stole that sentiment from the Japanese where they make a lot of, origami, of course, but they make a lot of things out of paper with the intent of almost destroying them so they can make more. I mean, it's just paper.
I love it's just paper. Just paper. It's gonna make me attempt that, that folded paper a little
My
bit.
work here is done.
Your work here is done. That's right. But not until you send me my repurposed tree. Then your work is done. Once I get my repurposed tree.
Oh, and here's a thought too. Instead of making your folder from like a new decorative paper, use book paper. Find a great big
Oh,
book that you don't mind ripping up,
right.
um, and just start using that as your paper.
I love that because as you know, you mentioned that the book folder was great for writers to start with. And that's what I love. I love writing and notebooking. What a perfect way. What a perfect way to do that. I love it.
Good.
You're gonna have to follow back up with me to hold me accountable to some of this.
Have a show and tell.
So you do lots of beautiful things with paper, but what kind of paper do you like to read? What books do you read,
Oh,
or do you have a book that you'd recommend to us?
well, it depends. It depends on what I'm doing as to what I'm reading. Right now, I'm reading The Old Drift by Namwali Sherpel, and I recently went to Zambia. My daughter and son-in-law live there. And so we went, and I bought the book, and I was going to read it before I went because I like to kind of know something. And my daughter said, no, wait till you've been here. It'll make more sense. And she's right. But it's about The Old Drift is the camp or settlement that in the late 1800s that was at Victoria Falls in Zambia. And it's what that whole Livingston area grew into. And it's about the dam that was built that, by the way, is only producing at 4% right now because they're having 23-hour blackouts. But she's very factual in her details, even though it's historical fiction. So it's a slow start, but now that I'm about 100 pages in, I'm understanding it a little better. But while I'm traveling, I tend to literary junk food, make cozy mysteries, things that I can just sort of pick up and put down, and sort of just that's kind of that's my go-to.
Oh, it's my go-to also. If I could read, my kind of literary junk food is anything set in a bakery or a bookshop or overseas. Like that is my literary junk food. So I totally understand having just that genre that's your go-to that just makes you feel good. And so why not go there?
But still makes you think a little bit, like P.D. James, it's technically a cozy mystery, but it's thoughtful cozy mysteries. So I like my literary junk food. So
we all do. We all do. There's a time and a place for, 4-course meals and a time and a place for the literary desserts.
Yes, I agree.
So I have so enjoyed chatting with you. You've definitely got you've got my creative wheels thinking, at least, of how much you must have a lot of fun, because I can hear it in your voice of how much you love the process of just finding the paper and then doing this work. It just sounds so lovely.
Right. I mean, it is a job. It is my business, but it's a lifestyle. And people say, when are you going to retire? And I'm kind of like, well, I kind of do what people retire to do. What am I going to do? Retire and become an accountant? I mean, it's kind of, I'm kind of always been there. So, but it just is, I'm a maker, and there are makers, there are thinkers, there are doers, there are writers. I'm definitely, the first part of my list is a maker, and I have to make things, and I'm a function freak. I have to make things that serve a purpose. So that's what I do.
I love it.
Thanks.
I love it. And it's all beautiful. Listeners can't see it. They're just hearing us talk about it, but I know when they find you, they're just going to have to stay and get comfortable and scroll through a little while. So where can they find you so that they can see the book trees and the mini libraries and all the things?
Right. Well, uncommon goods, of course, even though you say they're back ordered, I have a feeling they're in the pipeline and are going to pop up any minute.
Wonderful.
And when they first contacted me, I said no, but Nicole, the buyer, very gently and kindly brought me to yes. And they have been delightful to work with. I mean, wow. And then also on Etsy at the Paper Assembly.
Mhm.
And if you go to my website and hit shop, it takes you to the Etsy shop because they have a better infrastructure for sales and shipping and all that.
Yeah.
I'm locally here in Lake Oswego, Oregon. I'm at Rain Spark Gallery, which is a pop-up that we do 2 months a year. And then my studio sale, which is coming up. So it's just, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Yeah, I'm not doing a lot of galleries right now for a lot of reasons. Keeping up with what they, you know, the product that they need is difficult. But Etsy's a good stopping point for me right now. And then just add these little shows whenever they happen.
Yeah. Those, I love the pop-ups. I always
Yes.
love visiting a good pop-up. So I'm glad that all of you makers create them.
Well, they've got a great energy, you know, because you're only there for a short time. Everybody there is excited and keeps going. And people keep saying, would you do this all year? And we kind of look at each other and go, no, because it wouldn't be the same.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I am so grateful that you hopped on today to share your work, share these beautiful things, and hopefully inspire a little creativity in us listeners as well.
I hope so. Please visit the tutorial section. I think there's something in there that would appeal to most people.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And for those of you that are in my Get Literate Patreon community, we can hold each other accountable. We can post what we're working on and reach out to each other and take pictures of all of our,
Absolutely.
messy first starts and see what we end up with as well. So thank you for putting
Thank you.
tutorials out there as well for people like me who want to be a little bit more creative, but need that little bit of hand holding.
You'll get there. I know you will.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
so
you.
appreciate it, Debra.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life there, like book lists, notebooking ideas, personalized book recommendations, and an invitation to join my Get Literate Patreon community. Each month, we take a deep dive into one bookish theme and work to bring it to life in our own lives. You'll get bonus episodes, book calendars, live book club and notebooking sessions, special events, and much, much more. You can find more about the Get Literate Patreon community at getliterate.co. And one more thing, if you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or just take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and no bookish community too. Thanks for listening.